get started.
And welcome to the Indiana Arts Commission Region 1 grant. This is a public meeting. We're going to review the fiscal year 22 Arts Commission Program Arts Support Grant for Region 1. I'm Larry Breckner, and I'm a member of the Regional Arts Council, also a fine art photographic artist, a vice chair of Chesterton Arts Center in Chesterton, board chair for Lakeshore Public Media, and I'll be facilitating today's panel. Today is April 27th, 2021. We're meeting online and streaming live for applicants and the public to observe. We welcome applicants and other guests who may be listening today and would remind everyone that there is no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation or disposition of the application before, during, or after the panel meeting or between panelists and applications. At this time, I'd like to invite all the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating your name, occupation, where they're from in the state, and I'll call it your name. Let's start with the panel. And Liam Bonner, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Liam Bonner, the Executive Director of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir, and I'm here in Marion County.
Thank you, Liam. Karen Lauerman.
Karen Lauerman, President and CEO of the Lake County Indiana Economic Alliance and South Shore Arts Board Member.
Thank you. Donna Catalano.
Hi, I am Donna Catalano. I am the Community Development Director for Legacy Foundation here in Maryville, Indiana.
Next, Mark Kiesling.
And I'm Mark Kiesling, and I'm the founder of the Da Vinci Pursuit in Indianapolis.
Kelly Freeman.
Hi, I'm Kelly Freeman. I'm the Executive Assistant with South Shore Arts, and I'm also the IAC Regional Arts Partner for Region 1, which serves Lake Porter and LaPorte counties.
Thank you, Kelly. Chapin Schnick.
Hey there, Chapin Schnick. I'm the Contracts Operations and IT Assistant at the Arts Commission, and I'm here in a tech role.
Okay, Maya Michelson.
Hi, I'm Maya Michelson, Deputy Director of the Arts Commission, and I am here for moral support.
Thank you very much. That's our panel. Now we'll begin the panel review. This is how the process will work. I will announce the application and we will review and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based on the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the application does not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We're not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists bring to the table. After the second reader is finished, I will open the discussion to a full panel to offer perspectives if necessary. Remember that in the interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, we will place that panelist's video and audio on hold during that application evaluation. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we will ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It's common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion, and these scores will save automatically. Are there any questions today?
Larry, Phil Potempa, I'll just hop in and do a quick introduction for myself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Phil. I missed you.
Right. Phil Potempa, board member also with Region 1, the Arts Board, and also a columnist for arts and culture for Chicago Tribune Media, Post Tribune, and director of marketing for the Center for Visual and Performing Arts in Munster.
Okay, sorry about that, Phil. Didn't mean to skip you there.
All right.
Okay, so let's begin. Let's now start the process and we will review the first application. First application is for the Northwest Indiana Excellence in Theater Foundation. And the first reader is Liam. Go ahead, please.
All right. Well, it was really great. One of the reasons I love doing these panels is because I get to learn so much about organizations I wasn't yet aware of. And selfishly, I like to steal some ideas that other organizations are doing really well. For this application, I had a couple of questions about NIETF when reading the application, but when later in the application I was able to visit the website, I got a lot of those answers, such as member theaters fees, and that basically this is an umbrella organization. So I think in the application, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail in the application itself about those specifics regarding the organization. I wasn't exactly sure who the 6 artists were that would be directly financially benefiting through the project, or the 100 artists who would be indirectly financially benefiting. You know, does each selected theater get a stipend? And if so, how much? Does the stipend go to the theater or to an individual artist? Another point in the application, I really enjoyed the variety of performance dates. as not everyone is typically off on a standard Saturday, Sunday weekend. A lot of folks still have to work on those weekends. So I think that's really great for access to have some weekday shows. It's great to have the audience feedback about the shows that they would like to see performed. Would have liked to have seen a little more information about the demographics of the audience served, but really nice regular social media engagement through the Facebook page. With regards to project management, would love to know more about the NIETF board that are providing the additional expertise. I thought that the timeline was very reasonable, especially with the festival taking place next April to June of 2022. That's pretty much all I had about this application.
Okay, thank you, Liam, our first reader. Karen Lauerman, do you have anything to add? Karen, you're still muted. Still muted. Oh, there you go.
Sorry, we were having a problem here. Things weren't working technologically. One of the things that I wanted to relate about this particular application, I agree with Liam about the demographics, so I won't go into of the population being served, so I won't go into that. But because this is a new and larger program, performing arts program, this year, my suggestion for next year is that based on the work done, maybe perhaps a matrix, something that could be attached to show how many performances were done in each community in each county, because they do serve a wider variety of communities and locations. I think that they could also then within the application better use that information to broaden the outreach. This kind of goes in tandem with what Liam said about having some demographics and more statistics. I think that would be incredibly helpful, especially because as he mentioned, that this is an umbrella organization with multiple programs. I think that if they broaden the outreach a little bit more, they may find even other venues to host these locations. But all in all, I think that, you know, the outreach and overall looks good as far as as an application. The one thing I do want to compliment them on is including the volunteer time in the budget. I think it's a wonderful catch as part of this because sometimes we forget those in-kind services, but volunteers do make up a lot of what these arts applications are about. So outside of what Liam had to say, I'm provided some additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the whole panel?
I'll jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry. Back in the very first section, and you guys hit it a little bit, but I would have really liked a little more clarity about whether it was a destination theater using local artists or whether it was artists from outside being brought into the region. And I couldn't really tell because there wasn't a lot of congruence between what the project statement was and what the actual things were. And I think that was a little bit what Liam was alluding to as well. That would have helped me a lot more as somebody that isn't in the region, has no idea about the organization.
Thank you, Mark. Donna, do you have a comment?
Sure. The only thing I wanted to add was that although the organization indicates that it'll take the festival to non-traditional theater venues and schools, I'm not certain of that the applicant has an intentional strategy to address IDEA. And I felt that it was a more of a build it and they will come sort of response to that. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail in that. The audience survey tool is stated as being similar to what they used in the past, but I don't know what that was. So I think they should have been a little bit more detail oriented in that. And diversity just seemed to be a little bit lacking. Going back to the artists served, I mean, it says 6 and then it says 100. So I'm guessing it's 6 theater organizations that are going to get some money. And then the 100 would be the actors that are related to those organizations that are participating. And because it did say each of those organizations would get a stipend minus a $250 marketing fee. So I think that was where that was coming from.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Any other comments from the panel? If not, I'll give you a moment to update any scores you'd like to do. And kind of just maybe nod when you're all completed. Okay, I assume everyone's ready. Okay, we'll move on to our second one. Okay, I'm going to Chautauqua in the Dunes. And our first reader is Donna Catalano.
All righty, let's see. Come on. As indicated in their application, this will be year 4 of the project. The purpose of the project states that the art is a key component, but misses the second half of the question when asked how the organization is using past experience to shape this year's planning. And question 2 is, tell us about the artist involved in the project. And while we are told that the workshop artists will feature a selection of artists of different mediums, where they are or will be from was never addressed. And it is important that we support Indiana artists in our projects. I did like the idea of incorporating an art show and that there is a monetary prize for best to show. Always like to see artists paid for their work. However, I wasn't quite sure what the rest of the experience will be. If there is already a theme, it wasn't indicated. It was it was always talked about in generalities. And I'd like to think that the projects have been determined at this point going into the season. The application for the art show does not specify who the show is open to. Whether they have to be Indiana residents, if they have to be along this lake shore. I wasn't quite sure who it was open to, so would have liked to have seen that be a little bit more detailed. Community engagement, I would have liked the responses numbered in reference to the question. It just kind of flowed and I wasn't sure what question I was dealing with when I went through there. That's just an organizational thing. I did not see an intentional strategy for inclusion, just an assumption that it will naturally happen. I don't believe question 2 was answered and how the communities listed in the first paragraph are included in the development and planning of the project. And the survey questionnaire scope and distribution should have been more detailed. It was mentioned that the participants would be tracked, but no method was described. The flyer from last year was very nice and the activities were good, so much more could have been used in the narrative just from looking at the poster. And the website did not work and the only social media was Facebook and it was dark from November until March. So I would have liked to see a little bit more activity. You want to keep your audience engaged, even if you just post once a month, let them know that you're still there. Project management, Becky's a great project manager. She's been doing this for years and she helps a lot of organizations out. I understand that this is only a component of a larger project within the Dunes State Park and that the planning has already begun. So I would have liked a bit more detail in the application about that since planning has started. I also did not know if there were Indiana artists involved. And the project narrative was very difficult to read because it was cut and pasted and everything was off kilter and it was a little bit difficult. So just be careful on the next time around that you format after you do your cutting and pasting.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Philippa Tempo, you have anything to add as second reader?
Donna hit a lot of the key points, and it's great, as she pointed out, that there's a lot of opportunity here, and they have experience for a couple of years. But of course, the danger also is when you've got such a broad stroke of a brush, it's sort of hard to fine tune and see exactly what the focus is or what they're driving at. Some use of examples, I think, always helps clarify and helps give a little better idea. So I would have liked to have seen that. And then I'm just always a proponent of that further outreach and marketing. And Donna had mentioned this also about build it and they will come. But we know that there's a lot of opportunity. It doesn't have to even take a lot of dollars to get the word out. So a little bit more of an example of how that outreach would happen to assure you have the engagement and attendance that you're looking for would be key. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Any other comments from the panel? Okay, Mark, you're muted.
Yep. I kind of don't totally agree with either panelist that was before me. Some of them, the things I agree with, but I think given who they are, given that it's Chautauqua, given that you don't know where your funding is going to be, I think that it was well written. And so I guess my feeling is that we're being a little maybe harsher than we should be on some of that, because even on the marketing, as I run a small nonprofit as well, just making it through the year and being able to put up a proposal. And that doesn't just work for everybody, but I mean, in this case, I read it differently. So.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments from the panel? Okay, if not, please update your scores as necessary, and we'll move on as soon as you. Oh,
Oh,
Karen,
Larry, Karen had something.
Karen, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just had one question in the attendance section outside of the comments that were already previously made. I know it was difficult with COVID, but when we're talking about their attendance number and just a participant registration, it doesn't help us understand the demographics of the population being served or in attendance for that outreach. So that's just one of those small areas where I think, again, some statistics and because that's what I use in my business, statistics and demographics and other survey components would be very helpful to have to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any other comments? If not, go ahead and update your scores and kind of indicate when you're completed. Okay, is everyone updated? Very good. We'll now move on to Opportunity Enterprises. Mark Kessling, you have the floor.
Great. Of all the ones that I read, this was really a wonderful, clear narrative. So what I really appreciate was that the goals and the impact on the community were consistent. It wasn't like we just took part of a boilerplate of something that was our mission or goals and stuck it in there and then tried to write something after that. So I admired that consistency throughout that. This is an organization that I felt actually works with the people that it serves. I think they showed that they're actively soliciting along the way, not that they've done a survey in the past or that they know their audience. They know that their audience can change. I think that they modify their programs based on audience need and participation. And they had very clear outcomes stated as to how they were going to measure and assess their programming. And then finally, I think they have a really good track record on their management side. And so this was a very strong proposal.
Thank you very much, Mark. Second reader is Donna Catalano.
Okay. I agree with Mark. It's a great project. The project is actually in its 12th year, and I've seen it evolve over time. You can see the care and the time that the clients and artists take with each piece when you see them and go online. The adaptation of the program during COVID is to be commended, especially difficult with this population. And I'm glad to see that it's continued. Art is an extreme comfort for this population, and the extra care that the staff takes is visible in the work of the clients and definitely a team effort. Let's see. And I also thought the curriculum, they really take care and time in developing the curriculum. It's well thought out, as is the evaluation matrix. All clients of Opportunity Enterprise have access to their programs, and they serve a spectrum of individuals with differing disabilities. And the project management, very strong project management. Curriculum development of 20 new lessons is no easy task. But I have every confidence with the research design and the fact that there will be a pilot execution to test it before it goes into effect. I found that to be very comforting. The budget is adequate for the project. However, the staff cost of $1,000 a month for I think 6 people. I thought that was a little bit low, and I'd like to see that increased a little bit if they can.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Panel, any additional comments? Go ahead, Karen. Karen, you're still muted. There you go.
Boy, I'm really having trouble with that mute button today, folks. What I wanted to bring up is that, the tangible art is, of course, part of the key, but as mentioned, I think Donna mentioned the application of the art being problem solving in these life lessons. I think that it's a beautiful grant application, I agree, but I think some of the things that could be improved for next year are adding in some artist testimonials, because I think it's important that with special needs organizations that we understand how the artist how the artist feels, maybe how the parents experience something. I think it would add a little bit of dimension to what's being offered, and then obviously the marketing and the sales component. And even though I'm a new panelist, I think somewhere along the line there should be a checkbox, and this is just in general, for these programs with students and special needs and others that have caregivers. I think it would be helpful for us to know that they have that in place, so that when we're making recommendations about use of their information or imagery, or like in Phil's case, he mentioned more marketing and outreach in certain cases. I think if we know that ahead of time, that let's say, for example, if I'm the parent, I've given permission for my student's image as part of this program to be included in marketing and social media, things like that. I've given permission to, for that to happen. I wouldn't be suggesting certain aspects of marketing, knowing full well that that might not be part of their program, or that they've preferred not to do that. So that was just one of those other comments, or if they do have that. And I think that the outreach is well beyond what nonprofit organizations do. They seem to have a very organized form. But I think that next year include that many of the clients become artists in their own right through those mass-produced pieces. I think that would be very interesting for the panelists to know how many of the students or participants translate into being mass-produced and marketed beyond just certain classroom programming. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And Philip, I see you have your hand up.
No.
Oh,
No.
you had your electronic hand up there. So.
Oh, I must have hit a button. Sorry.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Go ahead and finalize your scores and give me kind of a nod when you're ready to move on. Okay. It appears everyone is ready. We're going to move on to the regional performing arts, and Philip Potemka, you are up.
All right. Well, it's just so wonderful with all of our applicants today, just to see the words performance, concerts, activities. It just makes me smile with every one of these. This applicant has lots and lots of description and detail. They have, of course, a couple of years history for already doing this project, and it's geared with a wonderful slant for our youth, which again made me smile, because we want to keep young people engaged, involved as our arts continue. It's very easy to follow the application. As Donna pointed out before, it is so wonderful and easy on the eyes when things are numbered step by step. The detail not only just talks about what you see happening in front of you in the spotlight on stage, but I was so pleased that they also gave attention to detail for the technical side of things, which sometimes gets forgotten or lost along the way when we think about what the final outcome is going to be. Looking at community engagement, it's wonderful to see that they have a way to corral and gather that information Although it would be nice to also see that maybe just kicked up another notch or so to make sure that, again, when they do an assessment after each year, that they can continue to improve for the following year and that they are hitting everything in the check mark box that they want to. They have, again, I think, dedicated the homework in the background for the attention to detail, for the engagement. And lastly, when I did the math, the numbers seem to add up perfectly for what they've planned for their goal for the outcome and what they'll need to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Liam, you are the second reader on that one.
Thanks. Yeah, just a couple additional things, but I'm with Phil on this one. Fantastic artistic documentation. I so enjoyed the Super Happy Awesome News production and thought it was an incredibly creative way of putting on a virtual show. So well done there, and thanks for including that in the application. It was really helpful to understand what the organization does. In IDIA, I was kind of surprised to see the first and only mention of participant or member fees in the budget. So I just wondered if there were possibly scholarships available or something to think about to offer scholarships to those who may not have the financial resources currently required to participate, so that that's not a barrier. Those were all my additional comments.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Any additional comments from the panel? Seeing none, please update your scores as necessary. And can you give me
Donna
that?
has an additional comment.
Go ahead, Donna. All
I
right.
just always like to mention, I'd like to see that there's 25 paid artists. I always love to see that. And that the salaries are for musicians and technical staff. So always good to see that the money is going back to the people that are participating and giving of their talents to the community.
Always like to see the technical staff paid. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. If scores are updated, we'll move on. Rockopelli. Karen, you're up as the first reader on that one.
Wonderful. Well, first I have to say the organization of this application was very well done. It made it very clear by numbering in coordination with the examples that were given. So I compliment whoever put this together. It was very clear for me as a new panelist and a new reader to understand how things would be moving forward. The one thing that I do appreciate is that plan included estimates based on not numbers that they think are going to be workable in 2021. They actually used their 2019 numbers. So that was very helpful for me because during COVID, we obviously know that you can't assume things and assume people will be comfortable. They also put a lot of COVID protocol in here because it is an in-person event. And to Phil's point from a previous application, it was wonderful to see that there's going to be live entertainment. Some of the other areas where I made some notes, in-kind services from the town of Griffith. I know they work very closely with the Parks and Rec Department. In the application, they mention a few things, but I think it's very important to note the in-kind contribution that is from the town of Griffith or wherever the community location is. The reason that I recommend that is because there is a cost of garbage removal, of cleanup, or any type of permits for these types of events that might be waived by the community. I think the community deserves within the application to be included. It would further show to the panelists and to the commission this collaboration can happen between an artistic entity, an individual community, and to put a unique spin on this diverse festival. I do like that they talk about the types of musicians that are included, their IEDA combination. They actually listed out how many participants they would be reaching out to. So I think they did a very nice job on this. Marketing is very difficult for live music, live concerts, as some of our panelists know, especially as we're coming out of COVID, to reassure the audience members. And I think that was taken care of in this. But I think there's always room for improvement in the applications. But I think in this particular one, there was a lot of nice use of media. They did include some nonprofit media opportunities, and they did include some other areas of in-kind. So I think that was, for being a first-time reader, this is one of the best that I've seen.
Thank you, Karen. Mark, you are our second reader on that one. Any additional comments?
I would echo almost everything that Karen had. The only section, and I think it's difficult when we talk about with instead of for in that section on community engagement. And I felt that this is still using a little strongly the model of where we're doing, artists can decide what they're going to do for. And I didn't get a lot of evidence of with. And so programming with is a really hard thing for performing arts groups to figure out. But I think that's a part of the criteria in here. And I think that was an area that was weaker in this proposal, and next year would benefit from looking at that and saying, how are we going to actually work with the population that we're serving?
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any additional comments from the panel? Go ahead, Donna.
Going back to paying the artists, we got the paid artist, but I really like that they are having the vendor space. So not only are they benefiting 30 artists, they've got another 20 that they're indirectly benefiting by letting them have booths and sell their products and their crafts. So I was real happy with that. I think it's a well-run event that benefits local charities, but at the same time, it pays the artists for their work, includes visual arts, includes populations of the charity that is being helped. It helps low-income families provide music for their children, and it was very organized and well-planned. So.
Okay, thank you, Don. Any additional comments? Seeing none, just update your scores as necessary, and then we'll proceed on in just a moment. Okay, anyone need more time, or if not, we'll move on. Next, we have the Seedlings Theater Company, and Donna Catalano, you're up again as the first reader.
Alrighty, let me, oops, where did I go?
After a moment from our sponsor.
No, I'm here. Let's see. Am I in seed? I got to make sure I'm in seedlings. Sorry. Yep. Okay. I hit an extra button there. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. It's going back to the project. I like the idea of taking the performance to people and places that don't normally have theater. Audience feedback is used to guide the selection of the show. I was a bit perplexed, though, about the audience being senior centers and the production being Moana Junior. Wasn't sure if that was a good fit, but I'm sure they would enjoy it no matter what. I was glad that the directors and designers involved would be paid on a stipend. Community engagement, I thought the venues listed in the marketing piece were in themselves diverse. However, there was no clear strategy of how the program would be reaching diverse audiences. Number 2 states that they solicit input on what patrons would like to see, but did not include the methodology of how they got that information. IDEA is in the forefront of their strategy, and attention is paid to making their productions accessible. Marketing piece was good. Social media could have been a little bit more robust. Again, a dark period and no posting from October until April. Posting really needs to be done more than that. The website did not work, but I think that's okay because organizations that are this small, they can't afford a website. So just stick with social media, and they should just take advantage of Instagram being associated with Facebook and use both of those. Project management, Jerry Jaskowiak is indeed a seasoned local community theater director and has a great history in production and management. The paid staff on the project are mostly technical staff. I was concerned that there wasn't a specific production in mind at this stage and that the project kept being referred to as the pop-up. I would have liked to see a little bit more detail in the timeline. And I was confused on the budget. At the beginning of the application, it states that the director and designers involved in the management would be paid a stipend. And then in the actual budget, it says, and it says the actors would be volunteer. And then at the end, in the actual budget, it states that there's $2,500 for artist stipends. So I wasn't quite sure if that was the actors, is it the technical staff? So I'm guessing it's all the same. So that's all I had.
Thank you, Donna. We'll move on to second reader, Philip.
Donna's done a great job with all of the key points that we want to make sure that we emphasize. I want to just point out for our applicant, and actually that can apply for any applicants, for that outreach and for marketing. You know, we mentioned that this might be geared towards maybe a more established population or demographic. That media besides social media, traditional newspapers, radio, there's such wide platforms now that they also continue to have an outreach that is far beyond the ink-stained newspapers that are delivered on doorsteps. So just a little reminder that that also allows some opportunity, because these are such wonderful projects and ideas. We want to get as many people there as possible.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Any additional comments from the panel? Okay, Mark.
I agree with everything that was said, but one area still that was hard for me here was, and I would have liked a lot more definition on it, and that is, again, how do they work with the target population? And particularly in this population that they were saying they were going to work with, there is the tendency to just choose a list of things and bring it before somebody and say, which of these do you like? Rather than, and I felt that was what was in this proposal, rather than really getting to know the audiences that they're doing. So it's back to that same comment I had earlier, which is how do you work with? And I think this organization would benefit from trying to think that through.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments? Karen.
Sure. This reminds me of a youth program that I once stage managed. They were small group out of the Whiting-Robertsdale area. And I think that this is a great concept, but again, I agree with Mark about the width. And I've noticed that in this particular application that the width in a lot of areas is missing, and not to be repetitive, but it ties two comments together that I heard from the other panelists, which was engaging, being with whomever you're serving and your audience in Mark's case, and what Donna brought up, is there really a connection between the audience that they're going to, like the senior center, and the type of performance that they're putting on? While I know that Moana Junior is full of music and song and very uplifting and wonderful for folks to see, did it match the requirements, or did it match the experience that they wanted? In there, I also wanted to, again, note that the parent experience or the guardian experience also would be very helpful to understand, because those parents interact with the artists, and how that relationship is built, I think, is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the panel? If not, update your scores as appropriate, and I'll give you a moment, and then we'll move on. Okay, I assume that you have had time. We will move on to the South Shore Chamber Orchestra, and Karen, you're up again as the first reader. And you're muted.
Wonderful, thank you. One of the things about this application, I do appreciate, again, the organization. I know that's a little repetitive of the various other applications that we're looking at, but it's very clear. It's a much easier read for us organizationally. There were a few little misses, you know, in the application where I think, you know, emails were missing, or more in-depth marketing could have been shown instead of just you know, the South Shore Orchestra. I know that there's a lot of followers to the Facebook page, but again, I think that this, because it's a newer program, there's no experience to capture with feedback from others, and I think that's going to be important if this applicant comes back next year. More importantly, with the performance being part of the Valpo Arts program, it will be hard to capture the details about the audience directly, of who they're actually serving, because it is a free concert. I don't know if the organization can match up with what Valpo collects, if there's a way that the city is collecting that data, or if that outreach. And the other thing I would do that wasn't mentioned in here was, who are the Valpo arts program folks targeting, because if you're relying on others to market your program, that's well and good. It's great to partner, but I think that there needed to be a little bit more information on how the partner organization was sharing that same marketing aspect. I do appreciate that they are doing a variety of arrangements from different cultures and engaging the youth through music. But, you know, think about other communities, not just Valpo as the arts for their arts program, but how can you engage in some of the other communities to look at diversity and serving additional populations. I think next year, please, for the purposes of this application, please try and follow the budget sample that's provided. It's more helpful to have it broken down as in the sample. And you'll also want to make sure that, again, on the evening of the performances, perhaps include the in-kind services from the city of Valpo, because there are things that have to go into your performance, such as stage rental, moving of equipment if they're having park department folks, or if there are volunteers from the Chamber of Commerce and other places. It would be very helpful to know. I know it's in its infancy and this will be the first one, but those are some things that I noticed in reviewing the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Liam, second reader, additional comments?
Yeah, great, Karen. Oh, great comments, Karen. I agree with a lot of what you said. I just want to comment that the side-by-side performance, I think, is such a great way for young musicians to get that performance experience. So I really like that you're going to have these professional and amateur musicians that are working with the kids who'll be involved in this. I would have liked more information on the diversity of the participants. And I just want to give a little warning to be careful of cultural appropriation when selecting repertoire. So really make sure when we're talking about doing the music for the community, it's not just taking someone else's music and doing it. Make sure that you're having those conversations with those communities and that they're involved in those choices and selections. Karen talked a bit about the budget. I had a couple things there too. I could have used a better breakdown of the timeline, more specifics for this project. And I wasn't sure what, quote, applicant support meant in the budget. I don't know if that meant what the organization was putting up towards this project, or that's what I sort of assumed, but that was unclear to me. And then just pointing out that the numbers in the itemized budget were slightly off because 250 in kind was counted in income. So the expenses were 250 more than the income, but the numbers were actually correct in the total boxes. So just make sure you're going back and checking your work and that all the numbers line up.
Thank you, Liam. Any additional comments from the panel? Okay, Donna, please go ahead.
Only just a slight one is that the artistic sample that they put were from 2012. But when I went on to their social media, there were much more current performances, and I wish they should use those, because you really should have your performance stuff up to date.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Any other comments? If not, we will give you a moment to update scores as necessary. And it appears everyone is completed. We will now move on to South Shore Performing Arts Company, otherwise known as South Shore Brass Band. And Mark, you are the first reader on that.
I enjoyed reading a really well done proposal. From the get-go, you can tell that there are years of experience in doing this and putting in a grant. It was a pleasure to read through this. So just a general comment in that. One of the things I really, really liked, and I've been the one that's been really hard on doing with other proposals, but in this, I think it was really clearly articulated in that section. They spent time there looking at how they were going to be with that community, how that community fueled and drove their decision-making and their artistic endeavors. Again, really well done. A great proposal for me to have read.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Philip, you're up as a second reader.
I absolutely agree, and I have absolutely nothing to add. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And any other comments from the other panelists? Okay, we will give you a moment to update scores as necessary. Seeing no other action, we will move on to the Dunlin Family YMCA. And Liam, you are up on that one as first reader.
All right, just needed to pull it up. Thank you. This was a really excellent proposal as well. Very easy to read, very clear with regards to the mission, the project summary. Obviously, they've got years of experience doing this, and they seem to continue to build on previous years to improve the program. They've got a clear sense of who they are and what they do. And they've got a clear focus on how this grant will support the salary of 2 employees providing these classes. With regards to IDEA, I just love the partnerships that they're being used with other organizations to address IDEA, and I believe that they're implementing a lot of that. The staffing is highly experienced and the budget looks great. Really pleased with this application.
Okay, thank you, Liam. And Karen, you are up for the second reader on this one.
Terrific. Liam, thank you for summarizing how this application was put together. The partnerships were the highlight of this particular application for me and seeing how that was. But I do want to compliment them for staying very mission driven to their organization and having it being reflected in the materials. I do like the fact that their media outreach and their attachment was, lots of happy people engaged, and that's what you like to see. And again, because this is focused on a variety of age groups, and this goes back to, again, the outreach and the marketing in various forms, please let us know that you have a program in place, or if we're going to have a checkbox on the application next year, just let us know that you, again, what we're suggesting, using the students or the participants in your programs, that we do have, that you do have permission to use those images, because we do know that social media is a little bit more complicated than in the early days, but we want to make sure that our children are protected, and our seniors as well. And any participant in the programs, but again, executed by mission, and that's really what we like seeing.
Thank you, Karen. Any other comments from the panel? Donna? If you're talking, we can't hear you.
I did it opposite, sorry. Going back to the beginning, it says there's only 2 artists that are listed, and I'm not quite sure that they qualify as artists. I'm a bit skeptical about a 17-year-old being in charge of a program. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail on how that was going to be followed through. I was not able to open the art sample doc. It did ask that everything be a PDF, and that was a doc piece of work, and it wouldn't open on my laptop. I think most of the things that the seniors programs tended to look more like crafts and not art, but it's still a good program. I liked the youth programs and that they were evaluated twice a year, and that the parents are surveyed, as well as the seniors that participate in the program. So people participating do have a say in what's going on. I didn't understand the board members being active in other charities really aren't an IDEA strategy, so I wasn't quite sure where they were going with on that. I did like the relationships with the Chesterton Arts Center and HealthLink. I think I did like the training partnership with the National Inclusion Project. And I was really surprised when they mentioned that their pool only became ADA accessible last year. That really shocked me. But other than that, it's a great program. They serve a lot of people, and the employees are well compensated.
Thank you, Donna. Liam, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to push back a little bit with one of your comments, Donna, about the 17-year-old being an instructor. It is for the tumbling, which are the really
Right,
little
no, I
kids.
understand that,
And
yeah.
so I think it's appropriate personally with regards to experience. And I don't think necessarily that I'm sure she has folks that are overseeing her as well. So I don't think she's just,
Well, no, and I said that. I felt that I would have liked to have seen more description of how she was supervised because she is only 17.
Sure.
Okay. Any other comments? Please mark your scores. As a facilitator, I was going to explain something to our listeners that the IDEA is Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access, and that's on the Indiana Arts Commission website. So you hear that acronym, that's what that means. So just thought I'd throw that in so you would understand that when our panelists discuss that. Okay. Seeing that, we'll move on. The Town of Munster Board of Parks and Recreation. Philip, you are up on that one. Can't hear you, Philip.
It was my turn to not be muted. I'm sorry. Almost got through this. All right. It's just a wonderful opportunity with this cultural fest, and sure we know it's the fabric of community. This application is a little thin in my opinion, again, for building with the details that you really need to piece it together. I realize when something is an inaugural event, it hasn't happened before, it's a vision, it's not always as easy to have all the concrete examples, but again, when you speak in generalities, it's just hard for us as panelists to sometimes know exactly what you're going for. So maybe if there was some of the program was already anticipated of what type of cultural dance or music or just a little bit more to go on would help with the scoring of it. I mean, they've organized the application, but again, I think it just was a little thin on some of the detail to help capture exactly where they were going with specifics, just to know, is there something intended to be a headliner? What exactly would be some of the, the opportunities here, because there are many. Looking at the engagement and the outreach here for project management, I found that from what they've explained, certainly there's internal resources that are there and staff that are experienced to create a project and happen, accomplish what they want. But again, it's just trying to figure out exactly the focus for what the overall outcome is going to be here. They've provided again the background and some of the community need, I understand, for an event like this. I just again will re-summarize that just a little more detail would help me feel a little bit more comfortable to know exactly what the point of focus and what we can expect. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. And our second reader, Donna Catalano.
Okay, you know what? I looked at it. I thought it's a great lineup of local talent and collaborations from schools to performing groups to even the Girl Scouts. Munster is a great location, and the venue itself lends itself to inclusivity. I was glad that part of the budget includes a stipend for the performing groups and that the event will be free to the public. Munster Parks does have a successful history of a wide variety of events. They have enough staff, and I think choosing a cultural festival will be interesting and fun. As reference, there is only one other festival that of that nature in the area, and I was impressed that they did their research on that and made sure that they didn't hold it at the same time. The Calumet region is a melting pot of cultures and the listed nationalities to be showcased should make for a fun event. I was glad to see that the collaboration with the Girl Scouts, the local high schools, and the college language clubs, as well as cultural centers and religious organizations. People are proud of their heritage, and this will be a great way to let them shine. I enjoyed the links for the various performing companies. I thought those were real interesting and valuable. IDEA, the program is centered on cultural diversity, and I see it as a great way to introduce the community and to celebrate all the diverse cultures that are present in Northwest Indiana. This is one of the few events that it will be cultural diverse just by being there, so that's an easy one for them. The ADA accessibility, recent upgrades at the park is a plus. including members of the community, gives them an investment in the event. They had citizens and members from the different groups as part of their committee, and that becomes a natural marketing tool. Great to see that they are our partner with CSRI, which will help in outreach and more inclusivity. And great deal. There's great detail in their idea strategy, and social media presence is very robust and up to date. Project management, the budget is reasonable and Munster Parks has the capacity to implement the project. Staff is extremely capable and seasoned and well-versed in event planning, but I was a bit surprised that only $1,500 is needed for payroll and that there's no in-kind. And the planning timeline was very detailed and organized.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Any other comments from the panel? Seeing none, I'll give you a moment to update your scores as necessary. Okay, we'll now move on to our next one, Top 20 Incorporated. Karen, you are the first reader on that.
Sure, thank you very much. This application has all the statistics and demographics and interesting components explaining not only the programming, but the community that it serves in the city of East Chicago. These dance troupes also show how the inclusion of these programs in the school city, they work with the school city and others, but they're providing a beginning to end experience. When you take a look at the budget at the end, I know that there might be, for some of the venues, some in-kind from the city of East Chicago or the Parks Department, things that we have to consider when we're doing outdoor performances. We also have to think about police or fire, EMT. Those are all in-kind services if they're not purchased. So they gave us a lot of examples of the various dance troupes, but when you're talking about taking a group of students, integrating it into a school performance, into a school curriculum, that's very difficult. It's very similar to another application we saw earlier. I also think that one of the items would be to have participant, parent, and audience feedback, and then eventually converting those to testimonials. As we know from various art programs that our youth going through some of these art programs, or like with South Shore Arts here locally, the Every Kid program, what they become after the dance programs or how it's influenced them, I think is important for us to note as well. It does talk about the 5 instructors rotating through the classroom. In my humble opinion as a first-time reader, I think there were a lot of good things that were in this program application, because to be honest, having the demographics and also the average household income, the number of students that were in the school lunch program, incorporating your website. They also, because I wanted to learn a little bit more about them, as I've done with each of these applications, I learned a lot more from their website, very informative, but they also partner with various organizations to create some other funding mechanisms. So beyond the school funding, and when you take a look at that overall budget for a dance program in a school city that has very limited arts and basically performance arts, music, things that have been cut from the public school budget, I think they're doing very well for the budget that they've recommended, but want to be cautious in noting that there might be some other in-kind services or services that are included that haven't been noted.
Okay, Karen, thank you so much. Our second reader is Mark. Do you add any comments?
The only thing I mean, I agree with everything that Karen was. I think the proposal was well done. I do think it could have benefited even more, and this is something you could do more in the one area, and that's on the evaluation part. I wasn't as clear how they were going to evaluate their progress with their audience, and I wasn't sure that part. They just didn't have a lot of detail, and it could just be because the organization is starting out and there's some other things with it, but I would have liked to have seen a more developed at least a few more sentences on how am I going to evaluate whether this is meeting the needs.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Any comments? I can see Donna has comments again. Go ahead.
Okay, I did I like the artistic samples that were included and different venues and age groups. Especially, I like seeing the preschool and then the school age, and I like seeing them divided like that in their artistic samples. I love seeing that they have dance being offered next fall as an elective at school. I was pleased to see that. And I like that dance for preschool was offered as a substitute for gym. The instructors were all high caliber and from the area and well known in the area of dance. Top 20 is very explicit in whom they're serving and age and socioeconomic groupings. Inputs gathered from the educators, citizens, and even has a committee comprised of such that meets quarterly and realizes that planning is an ongoing process. So I like that they just didn't do this, when it's time for the grant and then go away. They do this throughout the year. So I thought that was good. I thought that their tools and methods were detailed and liked that they hired a consultant to evaluate their assessment tool, which is currently being studied. And I like that they did pre and post test for participants. I was a little confused at the budget because they had expenses as $42,300. Income is $42,300, and then at the end it had $37,350. So I don't know where that came from, if anybody else did.
Okay.
I got that too, Donna. I think they accidentally subtracted the in-kind from the 42.3.
Yeah.
So they just need to update the total box.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Lynn. Any other comments? Okay, a moment to finalize any changes you'd like to make. And we'll now move on to Tradewinds Services. Liam, you are the first reader on that project.
All right, another great application. So many great applications today. I think that's a well-established program. They have great plans moving forward to continue to provide virtual opportunities if the need to do so still exists. And they have a clear use of funding to support artist fees for each of the workshops. I think they have a great focus on opportunities toward IDEA, and I appreciate the demographic breakdown of the geographic area served by the organization. They have really good, steady engagement on social media.
It's demonstrated in the photos uploaded. The Adult Adapt program looks inclusive and adapts to the individual and what their needs are. Camp looks highly interactive and again, adaptable to the child's level of skill and needs. The same goes for the e-learning lab. I like the end clients by providing for their best life. And I love that quote. And I know that art is definitely one of the ways to do that. Community engagement is what Tradewinds is about. Of their 907 clients, they are serving 158 with this program, 87 adults and 65 children, and use 6 artists. The number also includes staff that have to accompany the clients. Feedback from the clients is used for developing projects and relaying back to instructors. And though it's difficult to have clear measurement of the success of the program, verbal feedback and visual observation of clients was a way to do that and definitely speaks to the engagement. Social media platform was very robust and up to date, and their idea strategy is a given, and that the marketing staff members are the lead instructors on the project and that the professional
panel. Mark, I'll let you go first.
Just as whether somebody likes something or not. Lots of people like bad things. That just whether someone likes something or not is a way of moving yourself forward in terms of seeing if there's a program that they haven't seen before or they would like to see. You don't get that when you're just saying I like or I don't like.
Okay,
To reiterate that same shout out, how wonderful that they already have a plan of action about streamlining.
Okay, and Karen?
The one thing I noticed about their artistic samples, which I think is directly relates to the diversity, was the students, participants. So it was an adult student, and I think it captured very much how we all feel about art and diversity. We're inclusive and all encompassing. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to whoever decided to include that piece. That was a very nice touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any other comments? If not, mark everything up. Chapin, just bring your attention to the next one. We have to say temporarily goodbye to Phil and Donna.
You got it. I'll go ahead and put them in the waiting list now.
See you in a minute, guys. For our audience, we are any conflicts, we always remove the panelists from the discussion temporarily. Okay, we'll move on to our next one. WJOB radio station and the Legacy Foundation is part of their fiscal sponsor. So Karen, you're first up.
Sure, thank you. Well, WJOB is a longstanding, obviously, legacy radio station in Northwest Indiana, and I can tell that this grant application was put together by folks experienced in grant writing or receiving grants. The application at the beginning, when we talk about the artistic impression, this is a plea on the panel, is involved Phil Potempa, but I think it was important that his background and his experience and why he should be the host of this show and his inclusion, a grant is being funded, that you know your key participants in delivering a message. I think it's very applaudable and commendable that WJOB is going to put in the gap in kind for the radio time. But I also think it's very important that to note that there is no other art program like this, at least from the material that I've read and being a resident of the region. I think that the budget is realistic. I like how they leveraged the grant monies for additional private sector funding to assist in underwriting this program. So it's not solely relying on the grant and the kindness of WJOB to contribute the time. We know that it's complicated, especially when you have a radio program and others in the social media realm know Facebook Live. Now WJOB has a much wider audience. They do predominantly serve the Hammond and East Chicago and Gary area with outreach. However, I know that the piece that I actually listened to and the website and the marketing materials, it shows much more than just those three communities through either the internet capabilities or the radio programming on AM or FM itself. One area that I was a little concerned about, but not too concerned, is how they actually incorporate diversity and that diverse audience, because I'm looking at it as a more holistic approach in this grant application, because we don't know what type of call for information is put out and where that goes. I think it would be helpful at least to maybe include a matrix of what's been covered. I know that's difficult. A lot of folks that do radio programming, that's another layer. But I think it would be very helpful in understanding how important this program is to the arts community in general, and the arts benefits directly. So I also think that the program should engage, and this was a question again, not an area of concern, but a question again for next year to understand if there are any other IAC or IAC grant recipients that have been part of the program. I think that would also give some marketing and outreach and credibility to the programming, because if you're incorporating other grant recipients, I think it's a good use of the IAC funding mechanism. I think that's it. Let me just double check my notes here. Yeah. That's it. Otherwise, I think it's a good application. And again, I can see that grant writers or previous applicants have prepared this. Excellent job.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Liam, your comments as second reader?
Not much more to add. Karen pretty much covered what I wanted to chat about. I will point out what was pointed out in the application, which was how great this this radio show is, especially for smaller arts organizations who may not have a marketing budget, to be able to provide that to them. I think is really fantastic. I was not able to get, I don't know if anyone else had a problem, I was not able to get the Facebook links provided to work. I think they were accidentally linked to a previous live broadcast that is no longer up. I kept getting an error message and I tried a couple different times. And other than that, I think that was it.
Any other comments from, okay, Mark, you have some comments.
Yeah, just briefly, somebody who's not in the region doesn't know anything about the radio station. And while it was a well-written proposal, I would have liked myself to have known a little more about how the programming goes or what it does. I get who it serves, but I think there was a lot of assumption here on the grant writer that the people reviewing this were going to all be from the region or would all know something about the radio station, and I don't. My area that I had the largest problem, and I know Karen, you brought it up a little bit, but I had more issue with it is I think it's a huge burden to put all of the diversity efforts of a thing on just the show host. And that's all I could determine from the way that they were doing it. You know, this should be board and people in the community. There's got to be some sort of advisory way of making sure that you're casting the net wide enough to get past, the systemic issues that we have that keep us from getting certain artists up and on the table. So I think it's an undue burden in this proposal that radio host is going to be the one that drives diversity.
Karen, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I did. I was thinking just the same thing, Mark. That's why I was trying to figure out a very constructive way to help create a matrix or the call for action, because if there's a list of the number of entities that they're reaching out to, that would have helped us as panelists understand not only by geographic location, but what other types of organizations that they communicated with. Because, and this is to Liam's point, smaller groups that don't have the marketing budget, but can't, but don't respond. There's only so many things that we all, in working in various nonprofits, there's only so many times you can lead a horse to water, using an old expression. But if they don't take advantage of it, I think that should be noted too, so that when we're, if I'm invited back to be a panelist next year, that I say, okay, look, over 500 people were reached to, and of that 190 responded, and of that they put X number of people on the station. It goes back to my stats and facts. A little bit more demographic would be very helpful, not diminishing the application because it's a good program. And for those, again, not in the area, I think that little bit of that little tidbit of history on the radio station itself would have been helpful. But Mark, I think there's got to be a way for them, and Liam, to your point, how do they garner feedback, and how do they track it? It's almost like a customer management system in other walks of life. I think that might be helpful. And I know that they've got limited staff at the radio station as well, but I think that that's just my suggestion. And again, I was trying to think of a creative, constructive way to track these things that isn't going to be an undue burden on the team on the host and the small production staff. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Karen. And what you're suggesting would be really helpful. Some vehicle that would help not only this proposal, but there's several that really need to benefit in this particular area. The one thing I would point out that might help the organization in that area would be as wide a net as you can cast, meaning that guests that you've had, former guests, can sometimes open the gate to people that you haven't been including. And again, I can't determine from the application whether that's being done, but I know that that's another way of making sure we're hitting pockets within our community that we may not traditionally hit. So.
Okay, any more comments? Okay, we'll conclude that. Mark your things, and Chapin, you can bring them back if your discussion is done. And welcome back. And we didn't talk too much about you guys.
We're back.
Okay. Moving on, Family Folklore Foundation. And Donna, you're up first on that one.
Okay, well, Meg, Dr. DeMakus has been around a while. She has a talent for bridging the gap between science and art and inclusivity. Her activities will be held at public facilities that are ADA accessible. And the collaboration with Cause for Change is a great IDEA source since Zuli Alvarado is right in Gary and is an international organization. So I think that really plays well for them. Let's see, where's she, I think I like it that the participants can learn a lot and then take what they learned about the science and convert it to art and production and puppet shows and radio plays. So all the staff and the presenters are from the area and they all have a history of working in this area. Let's see, project management. Again, the team is well qualified, and although this is year one for this particular project, she does have a history of running successful programs in the area. And I like that it is a direct offshoot of last year's project and that it'll culminate in a magazine issue and an iMovie documentary.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Mark, your second reader on this.
I agree with everything that Donna said, but I would just add that I think the initial narrative could have used some editing. And so that's just a warning to anyone. If you're going to submit a grant proposal, have somebody else read for grammatical or spelling errors in it. And the other is I had to work a little bit hard to find myself understanding the organization in the narrative. So, I mean, I could find it, but it was how it was framed. It didn't flow very well for me. And again, I think it's when we're from outside, there's these assumptions that people reviewing it know more, and they do, about the organization. But when you read it cold, you don't get that. And the only other area was really, I didn't understand yet on the idea of how you were going to work with neighborhood input. How were they going to get that? Where was that? So that wasn't, to me, again, how you work with is, again, one of the weaker part components of this proposal that can be strengthened. And we're all learning how to have to do that. So anyway.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments from the panel? Go ahead, Karen.
I like the program as a whole, but one of the recommendations, and this kind of goes to what's been said already a little bit, I would flip the focus to saying something like ecological experience through art. I think that would refocus the grant application and help you stay a little bit more mission driven to that to the application. While it was shared in a little bit later in the application, I would rephrase the first few lines. I know that's a little bit more in depth than I've heard previously in any of these applications. But that initial encounter, I was having a problem with about the partnership between art and the environment. I think if that narrative could be clarified as it was in your press release, because that press release was a little bit more succinct. So a little bit of use of all your already existing materials could really help streamline the application a bit. And I think also that as you look at incorporating more of the artistic story and capitalizing on the digital media, which goes back to some of the earlier comments for all of the applicants about using digital media and those types of things. Perhaps doing that will encourage digital documentarians of all ages to submit stories to you. Just a little thinking out of the box. And then because I work with a lot of municipalities in general, If there are any location costs for next year, in kind or paid, please be sure to include those because that helps me, again, as a first-time reader of these materials, it helps me understand exactly what your program costs are. Even if it's a parks department or the state, park, the dunes, if they contribute services like trash removal, sanitary stations, COVID protocol, PPE, those types of things, please include that because I think it's important to really hone in on the final budget. But otherwise, I think it's a wonderful program. I think using some of your previous materials or pre-published materials would help in this case. Thank you.
Okay, Karen, any other comments? Okay, let me know when you are completed with the application and comments. Okay, well, believe it or not, folks, this concludes the fiscal year 2022 Region 1 Arts Project Support Grant and our panel. I'd like to thank our panelists for serving. It's a lot of work if you haven't ever served on one before. I'd also like to thank Maya Michelson and Chapin Snick from the Indiana Arts Commission who are along for the ride to make sure everything's going on. And of course, if you have any questions, contact your grant program manager, the one and only Kelly Freeman. And we'd like to thank you for being part of this process. Thank you, panelists, and thank you all for tuning in.